How y'all doing? Derby Jack here. Let's make sure I can be heard. I keep forgetting to move this thing every once in a while. Anyway. Oh, you're going to bother me. Okay. So anyway. I've been sitting back watching this power thing going on in Washington. And the different segments of different narratives being spun in Washington and elsewhere. From technology to governing. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of misdirection, a lot of, deception, a lot of lies. And of course, they want us to follow these lies and deceptions and so on. Just want to read one part here in Revelation 13. And it says in 13:14, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth with the means of those miracles which he had power in the sight of the beast to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast and make it. And he had power to give life unto the beast. Power. I want to talk about this power. I can call Donald Trump himself a beast figure. Okay, not sure whether he's the Antichrist or not. I know he's lawless. And of course, at the end of this, I'm going to put my new song out. If you haven't heard it on my music channel, it's called The Lawless One. So, but anyway, I also have another one I'm going to put on the end of this. If you haven't heard that one, I also put the other one is a new one. Why I don't vote. Keep going. We give power to Donald Trump. He takes it, but yet in Washington, not we, but in Washington, they give it to him. It's sort of like he expects it, and of course they supply. That's a hell of a power to have over a people, even if it's just a little clan. Whether it's a segment of the governing bodies, right? The people. Whether it's one side or the other. Of course, they show us that one side's against the other. And of course, they all are in Washington working together in contingent, like a lot of us always say, one bird with two wings, and they got to flap it one time the same way to fly. They can't be, so. Power. Now, there's a lot of different power plays of narratives that they want you, but the narrative all goes back to this one narrative, which is that what you think America has always been is now going to be better because it's going to be in more of a control America. And that's just saying it in a nice way. I may have just given them an idea now. They'll be advertising a free America is a controlled America, or something like that. So we're living in that time to where those who broker the power the most are the ones and boast the most and are given that power. That power can only do one thing: consume. Now, when I say consume, I mean ultimate power consumes. I'm going to give a little prop here, okay? I like science fiction, and I was always into science, like Star Trek and all that. I like the wormhole show, Stargate, SG-1. Well, in that they always had some pretty wild episodes, that sort of kind of made sense of our psyches, of how we are. Now, there was one where Daniel Jackson, the scientist guy and archaeologist, and they're on they met this, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this young kid who was an alien or something put something in his head because they were trying to get all this technology so they could beat the people with the worms in their bellies and stuff. So anyway, he gave him this dream, put him in this, knocked him out, and basically he gave him a dream. And what it was, Daniel Jackson got the secret of power and was able to put all this stuff together and make these satellites that could get rid of all the aliens that were going to come. And so as he's getting the other powers, they got all these satellites up in the sky and fake space. So anyway, they got the satellites up, and they have but yet Russia don't like the idea that they're the only ones that have this technology, and of course China isn't too happy about it. North Korea, little Kim didn't like it, and so you got all the other powers but Daniel Jackson now has all the power. And what happens is he's got everything put here. Nobody in Washington has the power he has. All he's got to do is push a button. What happens? In the dream that he's got all this power to save the earth, he just blew up Russia because they didn't agree with what was going on. The reason I brought that little story up, if you've never seen the show, but I understand. But here's the thing. I brought it up because in a real world, one person who is consumed, who is given so much power, would be given a lot of responsibility. But the problem with that unharnessed power, with no boundaries, is very dangerous because humanity, our brains are not capable of handling that kind of power. Donald Trump is a good example of a person who's not capable of handling that type of power because it consumes one. It consumes one with what? Pride. The consumption of pride and the bigotness of the person within that person. I don't know if I've ever heard Donald talk like this, but he is one of those people that would probably talk to himself as the third person. And you've heard of people like that they're so consumed with themselves that they step outside of themselves and talk about themselves with such greatness and reverence as the third person. Well, Trump doesn't need to say that because he proves it every day of himself. And whether he would probably get up in the morning after a night of memeing on the internet, look in a mirror and say to himself that I am great. That's consumed. That's a consumption of power. And here's the thing. The power is only granted from a darkened heart, in a darkened heart, and from a darkened place. That type of power will never be given to a Christian, or should never have been considered to be given to a Christian. When you think of Catholicism, which is the opposite of Christianity, the Pope is supposed to be what? The vicar of Christ? I call him the vicar of Satan. But the idea is that he is the total package here on earth, the vicar, the representative. That, what does that do? That takes away from what Jesus did on the cross. That takes away from his purpose of what he's supposed to do to come back, right? They've taken all that. There's no need because he's on earth, right? So, power is very destructive. When power is harnessed, there needs to be a restriction. There needs to be a code of conduct. It's funny, whether you're a flat earther or not, it's kind of funny when you think about they can wage wars, destroy cities, kill many people with all kinds of mechanical and scientific abilities, right? They can cause all kinds of havoc, except in one of two places, the North Pole and supposedly the South Pole. They work in contingent together to protect that place, but every other place on the earth can be destroyed. People can be killed, burned out, drowned. Weather weapons against humanity. That's power. That's unbridled power to be able to do the things that they do. Now, I know many say that, God's in control. He is in control. But remember, who is the slumlord right now running the earth? It is Satan, right? It is the dark one. He is a slumlord. Any of you have ever lived for a slumlord, you may know what I mean. He wants the rent to be raised, and you want the leak in your sink to be fixed. You see? And he gets his rent raised, and you give him the money, but you're still waiting for him to fix the drip. This is what a slumlord is. And we right now are under the rule of that kind of attitude, of that kind of control, a menacing control. We have a man and we have a group of people who are following under his energy, this dark energy, and this pridefulness which reaches their egos. Everybody right now in Washington, on one side or the other, are very prideful and egotistical, wanting to be right. You got this thing about the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, I'm still this witch, this a black widow, if you will. The things that she's doing. The way she's dressing, the way she's acting. I have not seen a real tear. I see a lot of teeth, pretty teeth, very white teeth, but I see eyes that squint, eyes that are contempting, eyes that want power. Power is very enticing. And it rubs off on the people around you, as we see what happens in his cabinet. He's got a Department of War. That's a hell of a thing to be the first man who is now the head of the Department of War. That's a hell of a title. It's a hell of a responsibility. And you have got to be a very special person to be able to, know when not to make certain decisions and know when to. We live in a world where the people in control do not have these embedded in their psyche, do not have this type of thinking embedded in their narratives, do not have this type of way of doing things properly in their system. If any of you follow my music channel, and I don't mean to sound because of me, but each song that is laid out in what's going on is a representation and a chronicle of what has been happening throughout this time, as I call the end time songs. It's a chronicle. And like I said, it's not to build me up, but it's to understand how the Holy Spirit is working in me as the Holy Spirit works in other people in different ways. Richie from Boston has a different way that God works in him. And God works in him to do what he does, to go around doing the things he does, and you can't take away from what God has given to him. He has a very special ministry. He don't even call it that or even consider it that, but he does. And I'm not saying this just to build up him, but I say this as other people that are out there doing the same thing. There's a lot of others who have fallen to the wayside, others who have become compromisers, who have allowed themselves to be compromised to the point that they think that they have the power to say the things they do, but yet they're given a script and given some money. And some of them put their tails between their legs and get the money and say what they're told to say. And there's many of us out there who just want to tell the truth. They just want to spread the truth. They just want to, prepare people in truth. We're not wanting to compromise. We're not wanting to say something different than what we started out to do. We're not going to change the road. And we're not going to turn around and say something different than what we have been saying, because that would be a lie. You got to understand, salvation is very easy to get. But salvation and the position of what salvation is a very hard thing to keep. And why is it so hard to keep? Because there's so much deception in the world to take you from your resolve. And the problem is, a lot of Christians go to church and are not taught that they have got to grab hold of the knowledge and the wisdom to receive the power. They're not given power to rise above. I'm powerful in respect of rising above. I am not going to fall prey to what they want. And you got to tell yourself that. I don't sing the songs for praise. I sing the songs for recognition of what is going on in this world. And maybe those songs can help somebody in their heart, in their soul. Maybe they remember, I've said this before and I'll say it again. If Satan has used music throughout all this time in one way or another, in one fashion or another, I grew up with Led Zeppelin, man. I grew up with Eagles. I grew up with Montana. I grew up with all kinds of influences musically. And to make a long story short, when I went to Bible college, I stopped playing music for about a year. Put the guitar away. Didn't want to listen to music unless it was like in the church. Did not play the radio. Did everything I could not. And for a year, I got into the Word, and it was very helpful. Because when I finally came back into music, I came back into it with a different heartbeat, not the old heartbeat that brought out the old rhythms. And so change brings power, and power brings structure, and structure must bring wisdom. Okay? All the knowledge in the world is not wisdom. And all the wisdom in the world is not always true wisdom. The wisdom of the world keeps you in the world. The wisdom of science keeps you into science. You can't branch out when you're depth in the mud of science. You can't reach out into the you call the spiritual metaphysics, but you don't understand that it's like a living organism, the spiritual apparatus of God and the consciousness of God. Not talking about God consciousness or Christ consciousness, don't get me wrong. I'm talking about what is traveling throughout the aether, the air, the aether, what they've taken away from us. Air is not just something you breathe, man. It's life, it's existence, it's memory, as water holds memory. That's powerful. And they don't want you to have that type of power. They didn't teach this. They don't teach the golden ratio, but they want to teach you all kinds of physics and mathematicianal type stuff, which can be helpful, but in your spiritual life, you don't know. You know, it's always funny. Those people who do things in cults like the Masons and Shriners and Moose and Elks and all this other stuff, they do their rituals. They're very spiritual. and they do what they believe in. What they most churchgoers don't. They just go to church, come out of church, go to Shoney's, go watch a game or two, and have a good time. They live their dark lives. It's so important they make sure nobody knows. It's secretive. They stand upon their foundation. Most Christians don't. We go to church this Sunday. We don't go to church next Sunday. Yeah, I'm going to quit going to church because the minister is I just fall asleep. I want to go home, watch the game. I don't want to. So that there's nothing keeping people at the church. There's no power. Think about that. There's no power in the church. There's nothing keeping people at the church. And when they're there, there's nothing holding them down. And there's nothing in their hearts building them up. And there's nothing being delivered to build them up, to make them strong. So when they go out in the world, they are aware of the dangers. They're aware of the darkness. They're aware of the deceptions. They're aware of the lies in their government, in their own local area. You know, knowing that everything that they hear on television and on the news is not always newsworthy and mostly not always true. Power in the hands of those who are corrupt. There's a lot of power and a lot of corruption. You know, you think about that. If there's corruption, a lot of corruption somewhere, that means somebody's got a lot of power. And where a lot of power is swung, usually corruption is the club that is sweet. Remember one thing, you could come in for the greatest, like I said in that Stargate episode. Daniel Jackson wants to be the nice guy, but in this dream, he ended up finding himself being the bad guy. All for the right reasons, but did it all the wrong way. And in retaliation against those who did not want to obey him, did what the enemy was going to do anyway. So, you know, I just say this is because we are not, as a Christian, you can't pray away what will happen. We can't pray away the end times. You can't pray away any destruction that could possibly, they're talking about nuclear, it could happen. If it does, there's nothing you're going to do or I'm going to do in our prayers to stop it, because if it is meant to happen, it will happen. And if it comes to be on God's time, there's no amount of prayer that's going to change. Because what are you praying for? That's the thing. What are you praying for? Are you praying for God to make it better and make it go away so you can have the life you had before? And say, thanks, God, I appreciate that. Or is it a life-moving experience to want God to change, knowing that it's not going to happen? And you got to respect that. Do not live in the delusion that because you don't want, God won't let this. You can't think that way. Do not try to tell God what he thinks and what he don't think. Somebody tried to say to me, how do you know what God thinks? Well, I read the word. That's as far, and then and in doing that, I have the Spirit of Christ. So I don't know everything God knows, but God is telling me everything I know through Christ. Okay, so that's my reciprocal right there, the Christ, okay, and the power and the consumption that I get powerful consumption, but I'm harnessed. I can't do anything with it except for what I'm told to do, and I'm just a little peon, and that's it. I don't have a great purpose that I know of that's going to take me above and beyond. So I don't believe that, and I don't really want that. That's a hell of a lot of power to have to live up to, and a lot of responsibility. I dealt with a lot of responsibility in the kitchens, working the rest. I don't want that responsibility no more. I didn't like being a manager, didn't like being in control, I didn't. It was never something that I ever wanted to do. I had to, and I had to do it under a foundation that was given to me. But the thing of it is, it's not something I want. I'm under a thing now. I want to be under the foundation and the structure of power that is given to me. I don't want to be in control by myself because I know I'm corrupt. I know that I have pride that would love to swell. I know I have an ego that would love to jump out. And yet I'm harnessed in power over me because I have a foundation, which is what? God and his word in the power of the Spirit of Christ, which what? Dwells within me. So, remember in 10 also here of 13 Revelation. And he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Do you not think that somebody like Donald Trump is not a captive of his own ego? He's a captive of his own pride. He can't go past himself. Do you understand how imprisoning that is? You may think, well, no, Trump got no. He's imprisoned within himself. That's what ego does. Ego keeps you within yourself. And the pride makes you think that you're invisible or invincible, excuse me. I'd like him to be invisible, but he thinks he's invincible. I mean, the illusion is he gave us the illusion that he was shot at and was invincible, right? That was the illusion that they gave us. And so if you're walking off, if you're going by that as your foundation, then you're being led by his prideful ego. And basically, his ego has no foundation and it's not harnessed in any truth. So you are following an untruthful ego and an ego in power that has no foundation or harness. And you're following that in this man. And I say this for all you people who would call yourselves MAGA, no matter what he's done. Listen, really listen. If you're one of those people listening to this right now, he's the type of leader, the bad leader, you've seen it in the movies, that lead his whole platoon into a destruction, Hey, we're going to go this way, and then all of a sudden, I lost my whole platoon because, and yet that's what he would do. He would come out and probably be the one given another platoon to go out and what? Destroy. I've seen the movies, you have to. They tell us all this stuff. We don't want to believe it, that it's real, but they make it seem like it's all science fiction, and yet they do this. I don't remember seeing the show. I never watched it, but I've heard a lot about West Wing. So, anyway. Was it East Wing? I don't remember. So anyway, I got this. I'm going to put these two songs on the end, and the new one and the Lawless one, if you haven't heard it. Listen, people, things are really progressing, okay, and they really want their new world order, and if you're not paying attention, you're going to be swallowed up by it. We're going to be swallowed up by it either way, but I'd rather be ready for it spiritually. May not always be ready for it mentally, or physically, that is, but I got to be ready for it spiritually and mentally. And the thing of it is that physically, it's going to be hard to adapt to this new world. It's going to be hard to adapt. A lot of us say we have a resolve, and our resolve is we're not going to conform. We're not going to allow ourselves to be embedded with anything. I hope that your resolve is standing on the foundation of Christ, because if you really have that resolve, I'm going to tell you something that might scare you. And that is, that resolve may lead you to your physical death. Think about that. The resolve of believing in God no matter what, and trusting in God through Christ Jesus, and stating and not being afraid to state when it gets hard and when they don't want to hear it no more, and they don't want to hear from you. When they throw rocks at you because you're preaching on the street corner, or they take your tax exemption away so you can't have a church. And when they come into your homes and say you can't have a Bible study, will you wake up then? But will you be empowered? Will you be ready for it? Or will you be consumed? And you will fall in your pride and ego. And what? Go with the narrative of the world and get the mark of the beast. See, you can believe in whatever you want to believe. But God has always stated in his word that in Jesus, that we, and even the Apostle Paul, we must always be ready. Because you never know. You never know when you're going to die. For all of you people waiting for a freaking rapture, you need to be consumed and be ready for what's going on in your life now. Every decision you make, every time you wake up out of that bed throughout your day, before the end of that day, you can lose your life. What decisions did you do through that day that were godly? What kind of person were you that day? Were you being strengthened? Were you being given? Were you loving? Were you this? Were you that? Whatever it was in your heart, remember, when you are dead, God is still reading that heart. He's registering everything that was in the heart. And if he sees no redemption, and he sees no salvation, he sees nothing of himself in your hearts. That was what you were ruled by. And the power of the world and the power of darkness, what? Took you away by your ego and pride. And you were not ready for it when the world fell apart. So, in saying that, pray for people that need to be prayed for. Pray for my buddy Tommy and his wife Jean. Pray for him that God protects his mind. And that's just what you need to pray for. Protecting the mind and protecting their heart. And in saying this, I love y'all. Derby Jack out. Got 2 songs. See you all on the other side. Well, you may ask me why I don't vote. You think it will change things? I'm afraid that it won't. We're all for a system that can leave you out in the cold. This is one of many reasons why I do not vote. Presidents are chosen by a few, so and so. The system was rigged against us a long time ago. They lie to cover lies and act like they don't. This is one of many reasons why I do not vote. I don't want to join the hive mind, and I don't want to go and lose lose mine. I don't want to live without my freedom, oh no. I won't submit to tyranny, no matter what they may throw. This is the reasons why I do not vote. The right side destroys the unity of its people and their goals. The left side destroys the youth, their bodies, minds, and souls. And society has gotten bitter, darker, angrier, and more cold. This is one of many reasons why I do not vote. Politicians compromise, play the part to get the vote. Each side believes their lies, places their ballot, joins the cold. You can barely feed your family, but in Washington they fill their bowls. This is one of many reasons why I do not vote. I don't want to join a hive mind, and I don't want to go and lose mine. I don't want to live without my freedom, oh no. I won't submit to tyranny, no matter what they may throw. This is one of many reasons why I do not vote. I don't want to join a hive mind, and I don't want to lose mine. I don't want to live without my freedom, oh no. I won't submit to tyranny, no matter what they may throw. And this is the reasons why I do not vote. Yeah, this is the reasons why I do not vote. There he is on the TV screen, the lawless one. There he is spewing lies again, the lawless one. There he is acting like a king, the lawless one. And the pages of the holy book speak of him. There he is talking peace from back and forth, the lawless one. There he is going back on his word again, the lawless one. There he is threatening those in his way, the lawless one. And he will be revealed when the Lord comes back again. The lawless one.